Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. Several new movies opened in theaters during the weekend that ended on June 2nd, 2024, but none of them earned enough to reach this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office. And in fact, the movies that were last weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office are the same 5 this weekend, but they're in a different order from last week. But unlike last weekend, which saw the top 5 movies' cumulative domestic box office earnings be slightly higher than the previous weekend's, this weekend's cumulative domestic box office earnings are significantly lower by a whopping 43.45% for a total of $48.6 million, down from last weekend's cumulative total of $85.7 million. So this weekend's cumulative domestic box office total for the top 5 movies at the domestic box office are between the $45 million domestic opening weekend box office that Ghostbusters Frozen Empire had, and the $58 million domestic opening weekend box office that Kung Fu Panda 4 had weeks ago. And to be honest, I don't expect the rest of June to be particularly good for movie theaters, at least not until Despicable Me 4 opens on the weekend of July 3rd. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please share the video on social media, please subscribe to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! For this weekend, I'll first quickly go over the newest earnings for the current slate of highest-grossing movies worldwide for 2024. The highest-grossing movie both domestically and worldwide so far for 2024 remains Dune Part 2, which appears to have ended both its domestic and international theatrical runs. Thus, its current domestic box office earnings remain unchanged at $282.1 million, while its international box office earnings remain unchanged at $429.6 million, for a global gross box office total of $711.8 million. Thus, Dune Part 2 remains the only movie so far this year to surpass both the $600 million and $700 million marks in global gross box office revenue. It's also the only movie so far this year to earn more than $200 million domestically, which is rather sad when you think about it. With a production budget of $190 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, we get an estimated break-even point range of $475 million to $570 million. Thus, Dune Part 2 has most definitely made bank. The second highest grossing movie for 2024, both domestically and worldwide, remains Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. The movie earned no money domestically this weekend, but earned another $354,000 during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $195.9 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $2 million to bring its current international box office total up to $371.3 million. Thus, globally, the movie earned roughly another $2.4 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $567.2 million, allowing the movie to remain the highest grossing movie of all time worldwide for the Godzilla and King Kong movies being produced by Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers. With its reported production budget of $135 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, we get an estimated break-even point ranging from $337.5 million to $405 million. Thus, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire has also made bank. The third highest grossing movie so far this year, both domestically and globally, is Kung Fu Panda 4. The movie earned another $110,000 domestically this weekend to bring its current domestic box office total up to $193.5 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $1.5 million to bring its current international box office total up to $349.5 million. So globally, the movie earned another $1.8 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $543 million. The movie has a production budget of only $85 million, which, when multiplied by 2.5, we get an estimated mid-range break-even point of only $212.5 million. Thus, Kung Fu Panda 4 has also made bank. So this weekend's recap for the top 5 movies at the domestic box office will include 3 additional movies that are below the top 5 that I am continuing to track. Rising to the number 1 spot in this weekend's domestic box office was the Garfield Movie, which is an animated movie. Domestically, the movie earned another $14 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $51.6 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $34.4 million to bring its current international box office total up to $100.7 million. So globally, the movie earned another $62 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $152.3 million. With a moderately high-sized production budget of $60 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, that gives us an estimated break-even point range of $150 million to $180 million. So as of this weekend, the movie has surpassed its estimated mid-range break-even point, and it will probably surpass the estimated upper break-even point as of next weekend. Thus, the Garfield movie is well on its way to making bank, and will be able to join the small number of movies that have managed to do the same this year. Rising into second place in this weekend's domestic box office was Paramount Pictures' animated/live-action fantasy comedy entitled If, starring Ryan Reynolds, Kaylee Fleming, and John Krasinski. Domestically, the movie earned another $10.8 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $80.4 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $17.7 million to bring its current international box office total up to $57.6 million. So globally, the movie earned another $39.4 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $138 million. With a reported moderately high production budget of $110 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, we get an estimated break-even point range of $275 million to $330 million. We'll find out shortly how much money this movie is likely going to lose at the box office. Dropping down to the number 3 spot in this weekend's domestic box office was Warner Bros. Prequel spin-off movie Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. The movie has a $168 million production budget, which, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, we get an estimated break-even point range of $420 million to $504 million, which, as I had talked about in a video that I had released on May 26th, means that this movie needs to earn about as much as this year's second and third highest grossing movies have just to break even. Domestically, the movie earned another $10.8 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $49.7 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $32.2 million to bring its current international box office total up to $64.7 million. Thus, globally, the movie earned another $55.5 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $114.4 million. We'll see shortly how much money Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is going to lose at the box office. Clinging to the number 4 spot in this weekend's domestic box office was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which has a reported pricey production budget of $165 million. Domestically, the movie earned another $8.8 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $140 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $26.2 million to bring its current international box office total up to $197.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $43.4 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $337.1 million, which makes Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes only the 4th US-produced movie to break $300 million at the global box office so far for 2024. With that $165 million production budget, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, we get an estimated break-even point range of $412.5 million to $495 million. We'll come back later in the video to see whether this movie's chances of breaking even have changed. Clinging to number 5 in this weekend's domestic box office was Universal Pictures' movie The Fall Guy, which has a reported expensive production budget of $125 million. The movie earned another $4.2 million domestically to bring its current domestic box office total up to $80.3 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $6 million to bring its current international box office total up to $77.6 million. So globally, the movie earned another $14 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $157.9 million. But with that $125 million production budget, when multiplied by 2.5, we get an estimated mid-range break-even point of $312.5 million. We'll find out later in the video how much money The Fall Guy will likely lose at the box office. Having no position in this weekend's domestic box office is the MGM and Amazon Studios movie Challengers, which has a reported moderately high production budget of $55 million. The movie has no reported earnings for the weekend, but earned $1.2 million domestically during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $47.6 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $4.1 million to bring its current international box office total up to $39.2 million. So globally, the movie earned another $5.3 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $86.8 million. And with that $55 million production budget, when multiplied by 2.5, we get an estimated mid-range break-even point of $137.5 million. Given that the movie appears to have ended its run at the domestic box office, and this is the first new international box office reported in 2 weeks, I won't be projecting its possible box office further since its theatrical run appears to be ending soon. Thus, the movie is a flop, and its current losses stand at around $50.7 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that MGM and Amazon Studios stand to lose around $25.3 million. Rising to 14th place in this weekend's domestic box office is Alex Garland's dystopian action movie Civil War, with its moderately high production budget of $50 million. Domestically, the movie earned another $173,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $68.4 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $558,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $45.7 million. So globally, the movie earned another $972,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $114.1 million. Given how meager this movie's box office was this weekend, I won't be projecting its earnings any longer, but with its $50 million production budget, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, we get an estimated break-even point ranging from $125 million to $150 million. Thus, Civil War is a likely flop, with current losses ranging from $10.9 million to $35.9 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that A24 currently stands to lose anywhere from $5.5 million to $18 million. Having no place in this weekend's domestic box office was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which earned no money over the weekend, but did earn $103,000 during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $112.7 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $280,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $87.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $384,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $200.6 million, and it's only the 5th movie so far this year that's broken the $200 million mark globally. And that's this movie's only big accomplishment because it is a flop due to its reported production budget of $100 million, which, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, yields an estimated break-even point ranging from $250 million to $300 million. Thus, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire currently has losses in the range of $49.4 million to $99.4 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that the production companies behind it, which include Sony and Columbia Pictures, currently stand to lose anywhere from $24.7 million to $49.7 million. Going back to the Garfield movie, using a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $92.9 million at the low end, $102.7 million at the mid-range, and $115.7 million at the upper end, which is considerably higher than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 33.87%, which is higher than last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office for the movie may range from $274.3 million at the low end, $303.3 million at the mid-range, and $341.6 million at the upper end, which is also higher than last week's projection. So this movie isn't going to have any difficulties making bank. Going back to the movie that's entitled If, using a range of possible average weekly drops from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $113 million at the low end, $120.7 million at the mid-range, and $130.9 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 58.27%, which is lower than last week's, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office may range from $193.9 million at the low end, $207.1 million at the mid-range, and $224.6 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection, but remains below the movie's estimated break-even point range of $275 million to $330 million. Thus, the movie continues to be a box office flop and may lose somewhere on the order of $50.4 million to $136.1 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Paramount Pictures currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $25.2 million to $68 million. Going back to Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, given that there's only one movie in the franchise that currently has complete earnings data available, I will be using a range of possible average weekly drops from 30 to 40% to project what this movie's probable final domestic box office earnings might be. And when I do that, I can project that the final domestic box office for Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, will probably range from $84.7 million at the low end, $93 million at the mid-range, and $104 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. Using the movie's current domestic share of 43.43%, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office will probably range from $195 million at the low end, $214.1 million at the mid-range, and $239.4 million at the upper end, which is a higher projection than last week. So the probability of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, being able to break $200 million globally has gone up, but the movie remains a huge flop with potential losses ranging from $180.6 million to $309 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Warner Bros. Stands to lose somewhere on the order of $90.3 million to $154.5 million. And with losses that large, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, remains the current biggest flop contender for 2024 because those potential losses are significantly higher than the losses that were amassed by Madame Web earlier this year. Going back to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, this is the fourth movie in the franchise's current form that has an average weekly drop of 34.71% and a standard deviation of 3.65% to create a range of possible average weekly drops from 31.06% to 38.36%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes may range from $167.5 million at the low end, $172.2 million at the mid-range, and $177.9 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. The movie's current domestic share dropped slightly to 41.53%, but remains more than 2 standard deviations above the franchise's average domestic share of 32.29%, with a standard deviation of 4.55%. But by using that domestic share, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office revenue may range from $403.4 million at the low end, $414.6 million at the mid-range, and $428.3 million at the upper end, which is another reversal of fortune for this movie as compared to last week, by once again indicating that the movie might marginally break even. So based on this week's projections and the movie's estimated break-even point range of $412.5 million to $495 million, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes currently stands to lose anywhere from $0 to $91.6 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Disney and 20th Century Fox stand to potentially lose somewhere on the order of $0 to $45.8 million. And finally, going back to The Fall Guy, using a possible range of average weekly drops from 30 to 40%, I can project that its final domestic box office revenue may range from $92.3 million at the low end, $95.1 million at the mid-range, and $98.8 million at the upper end, which is a slightly higher range than last week's projection. But with its current domestic share of 50.85%, which is slightly higher than last week's, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office revenue may range from $181.5 million at the low end, $187.1 million at the mid-range, and $194.3 million at the upper end, which is slightly higher than last week's projection. So with its estimated mid-range break-even point of $312.5 million, as I calculated earlier in the video, the movie is a flop and stands to lose somewhere on the order of $118.2 million to $131 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Universal Pictures stands to lose around $59.1 million to $65.5 million. Thus, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, If, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, The Fall Guy, and Challengers all remain definite flops, Civil War remains a probable flop, but Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes might be able to marginally break even. But the Garfield movie is becoming a definite success, while Dune Part 2, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, and Kung Fu Panda 4 have all made bank. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.